being a teenager is awkward enough as it is without having a bleeding disorder or any type of condition that makes you feel different from your peers. So having that really made a difference.
So I'd really like to begin by asking you, what do you think is the one thing people really need to be most aware of when they think about living with haemophilia?
People understand it's a bleeding disorder and there's medication that has to be taken to to treat the disorder, but it's the second guessing that the patient has. I would constantly have to think with everything I'm doing if I need to have my treatment in order to go and if I'm going to the gym or if I'm going out with my friends or anything, it's a constant thought of when did I last take my treatment? Am I covered to do this activity, or do I need to ensure that I've got enough treatment? If I'm going away, am I taking some with me? It's yes, I've got the medication, but it's how I have to organize myself to ensure that I can live the way I want to. And I don't think people kind of think, well, you've got the treatment, that's it, sorted, but there's so much more to it. Yeah, I think people were very surprised to find out that it's an intravenous injection that most severe haemophiliacs do and mild haemophiliacs take as well, and that it's done ourselves. And even to the point of if you go to A&E, they don't necessarily understand the fact that this is an injection that you do, and that I've had it myself where people don't know how to do the injection or won't let me do my injection, even though I've lived with it my entire life and I know how to treat myself. People think it is just a tablet, but I think it's just the understanding. People think it's die from a paper cut or you bleed quicker than other people and things like that, where it's actually more internal bleeding into the joints and does much more damage that way as opposed to just bleeding out from cutting myself on a paper clip or whatever.
So would you mind sharing then a story about how you being diagnosed with haemophilia has impacted on your family life?
It was either 8 months old or 10 months old. I'd go to bed with a bruise the size of a pea, and the next day it was the size of a fist. So my mum kind of knew, but that had massive ramifications on effectively everything. My mum with work, because there was times she just had to drop everything and come and get me or take me to hospital because the treatment back then, it wasn't prophylactic treatment, so it wasn't preventative, it was on demand and as and when I hurt myself. And my nearest haemophilia centre was a 50-minute drive from our house. So as soon as I'd hurt myself, which was very often because I was a very clumsy child, she would have to drop everything, take me to the haemophilia centre to get my treatment. My mum really struggled with effectively having to stick a needle in her son and to hurt me to heal me, I suppose. And that really took a mental toll on her, and she effectively had a breakdown at one point from having to inject me, and also felt a lot of guilt because she was the carrier and felt like she had done this to me, even though it wasn't her fault. There's no control over it, especially then.
I wondered if you would mind sharing with us in any ways that living with haemophilia may have impacted romantic relationships.
It's impacted a lot of romantic relationships, especially when I was younger, kind of leaving secondary school. I didn't want to discuss my haemophilia with anyone, any girlfriends and stuff, because when I was growing up, there was this kind of view from others, especially in school, of having haemophilia made me a delicate person or less than someone else, if that makes sense. So I didn't want to bring that into any kind of relationship and add that to any other insecurities that I already had at that time. So as I got older and was in more of a serious relationship, there were other things to then consider of if we were to have children, what that would look like, because the way it works is if I because deficient is maybe not the right word, but it's the X gene that's affected by haemophilia. So any children I were to have, if they were a girl, they would 100% carry the haemophilia gene, and the boys would be fine. So it's trying to reconcile of, I suppose, consciously passing on haemophilia, but also the idea of having a son that doesn't have it, and me being older with joint damage and things like that, and not being able to play football and stuff like that with them. So it's had a massive impact on every relationship I've had.
So you've already mentioned a little bit about your friends and when you were growing up in your teen years, but can you share with me how your condition has impacted your friendships, and do you have any examples of how it has affected your social life at all?
So I grew up with my cousin. He's 5 days older than me, and we had the same friend group and everything at school. Someone was picking on me because I was short and had haemophilia. So John, his instinct was to step up and protect his cousin, which was very noble, but then it cemented people thinking that I was delicate and I couldn't stand up for myself. I needed other people to, I suppose, fight my battles, which then had an impact again on my mental health and how I viewed myself because I had haemophilia, and then thinking that I wasn't able to stand up for myself. I suppose it is a rare disorder, and as we said before, people don't actually know what it is, and a lot of people do think it's dying from a paper cut and things like that. So the ones that spent the time to understand the bleeding disorder, I'm still friends with now. I've known them since I was sort of 6 or 7 years old, and we're still very close because they understood it and they supported me and allowed me to make mistakes and live that normal life.
So, Scott, we met you through your role in the Haemophilia Society, but I was just wondering, could you share with me how your condition has impacted on your career and your work life?
So when I left, I went into an apprenticeship in hairdressing, believe it or not. So I did that for a few years. However, I developed arthritis in my hands due to bleeds and damage from bleeds. So I eventually had to leave that career behind because I couldn't do it day in, day out, which sort of led me into various different random jobs until someone pointed out that apparently I'm quite good at talking to people. So I thought sales would be the way to go. So I went into car sales for a number of years, not a dodgy car salesman, a legit car salesman. However, when applying for roles, I was always conscious of, do I tell them I've got a bleeding disorder or not? And how will this affect roles? And I never used to mention it when I was younger. I finally got to a point of telling them at the stage of interview that I had a bleeding disorder, just to get it out the way with. And every time the person would say, yeah, we know what haemophilia is, we understand. No one knew what it was. A time where I had taken a bleed into my leg at work, and the bleed came on very quickly to the point I could feel restricted movement, and I knew that I had to go home and have some factor to deal with the bleed. So I said to my manager, I'm going home, I need to sort this out. They were absolutely fine with it at the time, and the upside is with the treatment that I was on at the time, it worked very quickly. So I took the treatment, rested my leg up. Next day, I could walk absolutely fine. Went into work and was accused of lying about the bleed because there was a stark difference in my leg the day before and the day of, and trying to explain to them that that's how the treatment works, that's how haemophilia works. It can heal that quickly, and they didn't believe that I was having a bleed. They thought I was just trying to get an early finish. So I got to the point of making sure I kept injections at work should anything happen, and even made a point of doing my injection in front of certain managers at times to prove that I had a bleeding disorder, which no one should have to do anyway. And even one point at work, I asked, I can't remember where I was working at the time, but I had to do my injection, and I asked if there was a room in which I could go to do it, because not everyone needs to see someone stick a needle in their vein. And I was told to go and do it in the bathroom, at which I said, no, that's not very hygienic for me to be doing something like that. And so I've left roles because of their lack of, I don't want to say understanding, because I don't expect everyone to understand, but I wanted to give people what I didn't have. I didn't know anyone older with a bleeding disorder. I didn't have anyone to, I suppose, learn from or to get advice from. So I mean, I found this society a little bit later in life. I think I was 26, 27 when I became a youth ambassador. So I was a little bit old to be a ambassador in book, but it allowed me to meet other people with bleeding disorders and share share my experience and the things that I had learned from, and then eventually became the first mental health ambassador for the Haemophilia Society, which I still am, even though I'm no longer an employee there. But that's then how I got my role actually working there, was my experience of sales and business development, and the corporate fundraiser role came up at the right time. So everything just aligned for that job at the time.
Could you share with me how living with your condition impacts your mental health?
When I got to about 14, 15, I decided I was quitting haemophilia. I didn't want to do my injections. I didn't want to think about it. And also shows the lack of mental health support for people with bleeding disorders. It is better now. My nurses and doctors let me quit haemophilia and just said, this is kind of normal. This is what happens. A lot of people with haemophilia do this, and I ended up, I can't remember how many months I went, but I ended up taking a severe bleed to my leg where I couldn't walk, and even with crutches I could only move backwards because I couldn't, it was from my hip all the way down, I couldn't bend it in any way. And that was kind of an eye-opener for me, that maybe I should pay more attention and take my treatment as and when I should. Um, and looking at it through, I suppose, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but through today's lens, is that there should have been more support for me then, when I was saying I don't want to have haemophilia. And it is all about the mindset of, when I realized if I looked after myself properly and tailored my treatment to the things that I wanted to do, as I said before, I went from someone suffering from haemophilia to someone living with haemophilia. And now, yes, there are times where it comes up in my life, like I said, relationships. There's always going to be a conversation about the fact that I've got haemophilia. My nieces are carriers, so it's going to be a big part of their life, but they'll have a better experience because of my experience. And now I don't really think about it, other than the day that I do my injection, and that's it. And I'm fortunate enough now that I'm on a very good new treatment, that I do an injection once a week, and that's it. So it's get that done. It's the closest I have got into a haemophilia free mind in my life.